a zombie movie?
No.
I keep seeing it. I haven't stopped to push the button.
I'm not yelling hey at you guys. I'm just making sure that my microphone's working, which it is, which is good.
If I had seen a zombie trailer was about to be displayed somewhere, I'd have been like, and walked away.
I've seen it scroll
I'm
by.
so done with zombies. I like, Chris, you're like half out of frame.
I am half out of frame. I don't know why that is.
I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna fix that quick. I'm gonna fix it.
Fix that shit, man.
We shouldn't be on anyway yet. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Hi everybody, if you're listening.
Chris.
Gonna get myself connected.
I think that'll probably be.
Gonna do it again.
Gonna do it again.
Yeah, so I'm not a huge zombie movie fan, but I'm a big Jim Jarmusch fan. So,
what else has he done?
Mystery Train, Night on Earth, or I think it was Night on Earth.
Oh, you know what I started watching? I watched a little bit of it because Tony dropped me the link. Was it's on YouTube? It was the new Twilight Zone. Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone.
I saw the trailer for it.
I started watching the first episode. It looked good. I kind of wanted to watch the rest of it, but I had shit to do. I was like, damn it. Yeah, it looked good.
Oh, look, we're already on. I didn't mean to do that. All right, here we go.
Ange says they can't see us.
They probably can now.
Excuse me.
Is that still you holding the blanket on that lower part?
Yep.
Yeah. Eventually we'll have a new screen at some point. When I get around to it.
Can now.
Nice.
Okay, good. It's supposed to be like that. I know we'll start in a second.
That's all right. We got announcements that we don't have written down here, but
I didn't know we had announcements.
I know it's just occurring to me that we have announcements. Don't worry about it.
Stick that stuff in there.
I'm not going to type it in. Just remember we have announcements. I'll yell them out.
Sure.
That's what could possibly go wrong.
No.
We gonna do that after the open?
Yeah, we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
It says announcements. We got a couple to do.
Okay. All right, here we go. We'll do it after the one thing.
Yeah.
All right. I completely forgot to hook up the soundboard. It's been that kind of day.
What? What's not hooked up?
The iPad isn't here.
Oh.
It's my gift for using new technology. We're gonna start a little late. Sorry, everybody.
And welcome to the Misdirected Mark podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit and you have been warned.
I did my part.
Dude, I got it. I just did the sound. I just did the...
Yeah.
That's cute.
You said your words.
Hey, folks. I don't know where it's going with that.
Hey, chat room.
Hey.
We want to chat with you.
Wow. Hey, Paula.
That's a deep old school cut.
Seriously.
Right.
Wasn't that in Animal House?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also on the radio.
No, I just remember it because I think that's the song he sings before he gets his ass kicked in the hotel room. Maybe.
No, it was
Was it?
It was Katie and Boone.
Oh, I gotcha. Yes. What did I have to pop-splain last night? Oh, I had to pop-splain Descenda last night. Cannonball Run.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, that's not. It came out a year before she was born.
That's true.
I'm like Cannonball Run. I'm like, was a comedy. I'm like, without even remembering it too hard, this movie's problematic.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
I was like, without even really thinking about it, I can quickly visualize Terry Bradshaw with like 3 cases of beer in the front seat, getting ready to leave for the race, and that's the least offensive thing that comes out of that movie.
Drinking and driving is the low bar for what's about to happen.
I need to look because I don't remember now which one came first, but I'm pretty sure Cannonball Run was first, and then somebody else said, we got to do that, and then they did Gumball Rally.
Ugh. Avi wants to know where we can find the episode about Son and I talking about leather. Avi, sorry. The leather episode? Oh, yeah, that's on the other podcast. Secret other podcast.
I thought that was funny too. I heard that. I'm like, whoa, 150 is interesting.
150 just got real interesting.
Real interesting.
leather is the gift you give for a third anniversary. It's the third anniversary of the podcast.
There you go.
Anything else you're referring to? I'm only vaguely aware of.
I know nothing.
I know plenty. That's all right. There's a few delete moments on last night's podcast, on last night's episode. A few things that are going straight to the trash can.
It was a little harsh for a half a second, but
yeah.
Turn it down. All right, now we're ready to go. Sorry, everybody. Blah. Okay, good. That's working. That's why I needed to make sure that that was still working. This thing is working. All right, here we go. 5.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Quite sure if it's like showing us off or not.
Well, now you totally
We've got the MM Live logo, not the show.
Well, I flipped it the wrong way then. Let's try that again.
Oh man,
it's one of those
rough
days,
night,
okay?
man.
5, 4.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
So instead of pausing for like 2 or 3 seconds, I think that was a perfect example of latency right there.
Well, forget this opening.
I know, right? Like,
Chris, are we talking about latency tonight?
We're totally talking about latency tonight.
Well, glad I didn't spend all that time color coding those lines.
That's right.
This is the 351st episode of the Mr. Ed Mark Podcast, which we have aforementioned we already talked about, that we're talking about latency from way back in the day.
So your mic isn't coming through.
It's not coming through.
Oh.
That's interesting.
Misdirected Mark, tech problems.
Right?
So, folks,
Do you remember that time?
Chris is trying out a new piece of technology,
Which I tested earlier and it was working.
which is
Yes,
the
it
lav
was.
mic, but
for some reason.
it's is a no bueno.
That's a no
It's not
bueno.
happening here. So
good times.
So because we don't like dead air, Camden, tell me about one thing going on with you.
All right. So I am about my regular or my bi-weekly It's Been Kids on Bikes game
Yeah.
is about to switch over to play Masks.
Oh, such a great game.
This is actually my first time playing
Oh my
Masks.
god. I cannot wait till you've played it and come back and talk about it.
All right, I'm looking forward to it, and I feel a tremendous amount of pressure because everyone loves it so much. And so I feel like,
I mean, it's okay if you don't. I just would honestly be surprised if you don't.
cool.
That would be based on what you like design wise. I would be surprised if this game doesn't land right in your wheelhouse.
Cool. I'm looking for. I am really excited. I took the Doomed playbook.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a good one. It's a bit tricky, but it is a good playbook.
Tricky. Is it some sort of advanced role play?
It's
It's a balancing act because I played the Doomed the first time we played Masks, and I ended up in session 2, like hitting my doomed condition and being like, I'm done, and I died, and I had to make up a new character, but it felt right. It's that balance of where you're gonna go and how long you're gonna let it play out before you actually.
I'm gonna let it slow burn
Yeah,
in misery.
It's good. It's good if you can temper that Doom move. You can get a nice burn on
I mean,
it.
I was a Teen Titans fan back in the day.
It's
and
perfect.
So
Yeah,
Raven,
yeah.
I mean, they
Old school
drug
Raven,
that
yep.
out.
It does. I mean, it does have a thing like Bob did purposely let it ratchet up because and blew it out. But yeah, the Doomed's interesting. The Doomed was the one I was nervous that Tony was going to take in my Masks game. But he actually took the Nova, which I now realize is a way better.
That's cool.
Way better fit for Tony. So cool. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear in 2 weeks. Your take, Glenn's awesome.
Yeah, that's gonna be cool, and it's my first time playing an extended campaign of a PBTA game too.
Sweet.
So it's a couple of firsts all in one.
I actually think that game plays really well long term as well. Like it actually, the advancements and everything about that game actually sustain themselves, and it's got this cool. I don't know if you saw it yet in the book. It's got a thing where over time you can actually take the adult moves for some of them, so you actually can kind of grow up a little. It's a really smart game. Like I said, I'm still out there hoping to make my adult version of it. Tattered masks or something. Like it's just,
there you go.
So Phil, what's your one thing this week?
So I ran on Sunday morning. I ran some more Veil 2020. This is the stripped down version of Veil that Fraser Simons made for the Gauntlet magazine.
Okay, cool.
And for Codex. And I think it's in Chrome 2 of Codex, if I remember correctly. And it's a World of Dungeons, so it's like a single move version of the game. It's super sweet. Like I've been playing it with Glenn and Bob at Panera in the morning. We've just been playing like some really light cyberpunk.
It's
like
cleverly put together.
Nothing
like
too heavy. Super fun little framework to play with. Plays really easily. Everything fits like on one sheet. So I'm digging. Like I'm really digging. I had a lot of fun running it with you guys. They were doing this low level extraction. They were stealing this up and coming K-pop star from their bad manager who wouldn't sign a contract with a record company, but the record company's like, we really just want this guy. Can you just go steal him? And it was good. It was like a super messy heist, and as it turned out, the fight did not go as
no, it did not. I'm riding a 4-point gut shot.
Yeah, it was just messy. It was good. I liked it a bunch. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, I'm actually working on a new game. I came up with an idea that that I needed to get out. So I'm making actually a sequel to Relic Hunters, my 2-tiered push your luck dice game. Only this one is a co-op game.
Neat.
So it's in the super early stages. I've got an alpha set of dice already made for it, and I got to start making some cards. And
do I need to go back onto online labels and order some more?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Is it just by chance? Is it called Relic Hunters Relic Together?
No.
Okay.
Wow.
2 Relic, 2 Hunter.
2 Relic, 2 Hunter. There we go.
That's bad.
Relic Hunters 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yes. That's always my favorite. Yeah. Is Chris live yet?
I don't know. Am I live?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Then I'm live. There we go. Yay!
I mean, I hear you, but I don't know if I'm hearing you.
Chris,
through
we're
the
gonna
mic.
let you try talking. Tell us about what's going on with you.
So one thing. So this past weekend was the Lake Effect Gaming game night that we do monthly at Iron Buffalo Games in Buffalo. I played a couple of games of Flashpoint Fire and Rescue, that co-op firefighting game. That's really a lot. We played with the expansion too, so that was pretty fun.
You're low apparently, so
you're a little low, and your P's are hitting pretty hard. So back your mic off a little.
So I will put that there. I will turn this up because the game was way down. That's probably a little bit better, unless that just kind of like killed all the volume. Hopefully I'm not too low anymore, but that's what I've been playing. So that's.
I like Flashpoint Fire and Rescue.
Yeah, it's a cool little co-op game.
Yep, it's my son and I play it sometimes. We have the basic set. It's fun. It's a co-op. You are firefighters rescuing people in like a burning structure, and the people are flipped over, so you can tell where they are, but you can't tell if they're actually people, a cat, or nothing.
They're called points of interest.
Yeah, and so you have to fight the spreading fire, make your way into the house, and then try to rescue people and get them out to the street. And it is it's tough. Like it's a cool it's cool. It draws heavily on Pandemic. It's got a lot of the same structure as Pandemic, but the way it models fire is actually really neat.
Because it uses a dice. It's got like a grid on the board for like you roll a d8 and a d6, and then you roll those 2 dice, and that's what explodes. That's where you decide where the fire goes after everybody's turn, which is really cool because you can. We had somebody that showed up in the middle of our game, and it wasn't really a big deal just to add them to the game.
Yeah,
because it plays like that. Yep. Like you can't do that with Pandemic.
No. It's super fun. super fun. It's one of my favorite. It's probably like my second or third favorite.
So we play with the expansion, and the expansion has a second floor. So like
you keep saying expansion, but there's like 4 expansions.
Well,
to the
we
game.
played the one that has the second floor.
Okay.
Expansion. So like it has ladders then that you can put up.
Oh
and
yeah.
You can and it makes it a little bit trickier because the second floor is not always very accessible. And
Does the floor collapse? Can you fall through it?
No.
Okay.
That's a
That would
shame. You need to come up a little more, I guess.
That would be crazy. But yeah, there's crazy. That would be a really tough game to play actually, because you can have the walls collapse. So there's rules for how the fire actually goes through and collapses walls, and if too many walls collapse, the structure will collapse and you lose the game. So with a second floor, if you had a chance to actually fall through onto the from one floor to the other, that game would get infinitely harder.
It would get infinitely harder.
It would be-
You're talking about board games, so I'm just sitting here.
I know
shutting
you're
up.
being such a good sport.
Cameron's like, board games, I'm checking out.
I know. I'm gonna one day we're gonna do like an Inception. I'm gonna like go in and see if I can't help heal some of the board game trauma.
We'll see.
It'll be like that episode of Rick and
Show
Morty.
us on this dial where the board game touched you. something bad
It hurt
happened to
me
you.
here, Bob. Right in my heart.
So, yeah. All right. So those are our one things. Quick, we'll jump out to some reminders while Chris is fiddling around with our technology. First reminder is that Gnome Stew released for April Fool's Day a Book of Monsters.
Yes.
It's a charity event.
Mhm.
We are raising money for Child's Play, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's 100% right. So, and this is your chance to get the one and only D&D 5e monster I have ever designed and will ever design.
There you go.
This is it.
This is a collector's item.
This is a collector's item. So I'm
Until
sorry.
6E. Until
Until
6E. Camden's not making another 5e monster.
That's it. This is the one time that you've got a shot to see the ham-fisted thing that I made. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you were great. It was actually laid out by the co-head gnome herself, Ange.
Ooh,
It's a really nice layout too.
Yeah,
It's,
she did a super nice job.
like it's pay what you want, but I will say this: it is by no means cheap looking. It is excellent.
Yeah.
Like it's laid out well. I do like the hand drawings for most of the monsters. Like they're fantastic.
yeah.
The monsters themselves are funny. It's on drive-through now. You can find it. Tell me the actual name of it. Who's got the actual name of it?
It's the April Foolio of Fiends.
Thank you. You can find it by searching for that, or you can find it under Encoded Designs.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so there's that thing. Other things. It's tomorrow is Andy's birthday.
Yay.
So we here on the podcast want to celebrate that. We're going to sing a little happy birthday to Andy in lieu of it'll be tomorrow, but we don't record tomorrow, so
Yeah.
you get it tonight, a day early. Ready?
Yes.
Here we
Always.
go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
You.
Happy birthday, dear Andy. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Andy. We love you.
Yay! Awesome. Andy had a cool murder mystery.
I saw. I was
yeah.
super jealous.
Yeah, there were some dapper looking people. When who like normally is dapper at all times, like really like turned it up for the like I forget, it was like purple or something, right?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like it was. I have never had clothes that dapper before. Like I don't.
Yeah, when is all the way in?
Yeah.
Like full dapper.
Yeah.
Like, whatever the dial to dapper
Yeah.
is capable of.
I think
about
that
one
goes
past
to
that.
like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I'm like a cis dude. I'm like, wow, my game is like I don't even have game compared to what like when's
That's right.
When's clothes are sharp. Anyway, so yeah, that's our second announcement. Any other announcements? Anything else going on?
I don't think so.
I got a bunch of stuff I
think that's
can't
pretty
talk
much it.
about yet, but that's
Yeah.
fine. We just won't talk about that stuff yet.
vague casting is vague.
Close.
Vague casting is vague.
Vague casting is vague. I want to tell you guys so many things.
What are we
but I
vague
can't.
casting about? Oh, we can't talk
Stuff
got
that
about
we
it.
can't
stuff,
talk
man.
about.
I got stuff left
Never
and right.
mind.
Stuff and things because
I got
reasons.
stuff that's signed. I got stuff that's not signed yet. Like all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of things.
Good
We'll
stuff.
get there. It'll
Um,
be a thing at some point.
If what you call it, if our feed is choppy tonight, it's probably because people are still buying Avengers tickets.
Yes.
I think
they're-
the internet
that makes
the
sense.
internet's probably crumbling under the strain of all of the advanced purchases. I believe I had friends trying to buy tickets earlier today, and they were like, AMC's down, and what is it? AMC was down. Fandango was putting people in a digital queue. So anyway, that's all the announcements I got. Anybody else got anything?
Not for me.
Chris
No.
is still fighting technology, so
Hey,
we're just going to keep going.
There's going to be a Kickstarter for One Child's Heart in like 2 weeks.
Oh yeah,
That's
Yeah.
the thing.
That's the thing.
The 16th.
16th is when we're launching.
Yeah, mark that on your calendar.
Mark that on your calendar. We'll be podcasting that evening, and Camden will be here to tell you all about the game.
We'll be grilling Camden all about the game.
It's not going to be like that. This is a friendly, safe place. There's no grilling.
I'm going to sit over there on the other side of the table.
We're gonna shine a spotlight in his face.
Answer our questions.
No, we are gonna, but we are going to give, a deep dive into the mechanics, into the setting, into the process.
As soon
of
as Phil
One
tries to
Child's Heart.
waterboard you, I'm cutting it off. Like no waterboarding.
I
Only with
appreciate that.
consent.
We
That's-
do
that's
draw
fair.
lines here.
I don't consent to waterboarding.
That's okay. That's all right. We don't have to,
It's ridiculous. Well, we are ridiculous. Never mind. Let's just go to the garage.
but we are about consent.
Access
We are
granted.
completely about consent. Hopefully my audio is better now. It feels like it's better. I mean, it sounds a little bit weird, but it seems like it's coming through pretty okay. So we're talking about latency tonight. Latency is a term we use a lot in the show, and it's something that's in our design lexicon. We introduced the topic back in episodes 168 and 169, which is in August of 2015.
Woof.
What
been
year
a
is
while.
it? It's 2019, isn't it?
2019.
Yes, it is.
Oh.
Been doing this for a little while.
Just for a little while. All right.
Yipper.
So it's time for us to revisit this topic. I mean, also Camden's here, so he'll have different thoughts, and
Uh-huh.
we have 4 years now since then, so we'll have different thoughts also. But before we start all that, we have to do what we always do. So let's get a definition in there. So, Definition Panda, would you tell us about the 2015 definition of latency and how if it still holds up in 2019?
Right? I went and dug this thing out of the show notes. So back in 2015, we used the following definition. We talked about narrative latency. We were actually very specific about this, as the time it takes from being in the narrative to switching to the mechanics and then returning to the narrative. Which I think still holds up today, especially if you look at something like a PBTA game. That's, I think, exactly true. You start with conversation, you engage a move, you return to the conversation. So narrative latency still holds up. And there's some other forms of latency I also thought we could look at, looking back on this now 4 years later. So scene latency, the time it takes to get from one scene to the next scene. And this will, I think, fit really well when we start talking about more story games. And turn latency, right? The time it takes to go from one person's turn to another, which I thought, pulled into things like board games, as well as combat turns and things like that.
All right. So the idea is that when you were doing one particular action, you switch to a second action, and then you have to go back to the first. So there's that, I'm doing something, I do something else, I come back to the first. For narrative latency, so it's that narrative mechanic narrative that Phil was just describing. And then for scene latency, it's that you play out that scene, and you see this in a lot of games. There's some sort of transition in between where you're taken out of that. It's can be as simple as an intermission. It could be you're actually in a different place describing things, and then you transition to that next scene. And then there's also turn latency, which is from player A to player B to the next player. And that latency issue can be down to the players at the table and also mechanically as well. And sometimes those two things overlap in positive and negative ways.
Absolutely.
So adding to that concept, we're going to talk about something they did not discuss in 2015, and that's the idea of positive latency and how that can serve the design and the table experience. So, negative things, everyone's sitting around staring at each other, not having anything to do, that's pretty easy to grasp. But when because nobody likes just sitting around. But there are ways that latency can be good that will slow down or pause what's happening at the table. And that can be de-escalating tension. It can also be to mark the transition from a scene or a time period in a way that makes it really organic, that sets people up to go into the next section. So keep that in mind as we jump into this discussion.
Sweet. So, you ready, Chris?
Let's see.
Okay, here we go.
I believe in you.
I don't know. Let's see. No, I'm still really quiet. So never mind. Phil asked a question.
Yeah. Let's start with a really easy question. Name a game or mechanic that is an example of bad latency. And I'll jump right in. I'll jump right in with one that everybody who's been listening for a little while will remember, which is Gangbusters Combat.
Yeah.
10 steps, 10 individual steps to complete a combat turn, which on the show when we did the exploratory play, we did all 10 steps.
I'm sorry.
Well, we did it. We did it to make an example.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely highly latent, right? Like the idea of how long, I mean, it was latent in mechanical terms just to get through one person's turn. But then to get anywhere from round one, what happened in round one to round two was like exponentially longer because it was that turn latency per player. And then per GM. Like it was a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my example. Many of the people in chat room, I'm sure, remember, and a number of listeners should remember as well. Gangbusters Combat.
Gangbusters.
Camden, tell me another one.
So I'm not going to actually name this superhero RPG just because I don't want to throw shade on anybody, and this was such a negative experience. But there was a game that I played with the creators. And initiative literally at the beginning of every round took 15 to 20 minutes. It was complicated enough where he said, I don't have time to explain it to you. So roll your dice, tell me what you get, and then I'll work up. And he had spreadsheets to actually sit and do each initiative, each person's initiative individually, and then would rank them. And so it was just literally people sitting around.
Whoa.
If you've got to crack open a spreadsheet, you have an issue.
And did the initiative change per turn?
Every turn.
Oh my
It
God.
had to happen every single turn.
God.
It was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. So, Bob, what about you?
Good job.
So here's something that you don't see a lot of, but I encountered it once for sure, and I feel like there were two products that had it, but freeform spellcasting, where on the fly you're deciding, okay, I want to have a thing that has this duration with this effect and this range, and you got to sit there and you got to figure it all out.
Mm-hmm.
That is just like
the menu selection.
The menu selection.
Right.
Menu selection is rough.
That is not like it was during the D20 glut, and like everybody was making D20 products, and there was a product that I believe was called something along the lines of Magic, the Science and Art of Causing Change, something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great idea, like, you get all this, but like just in practice, you have analysis paralysis because you have all these decisions to make, and then you're just like,
I mean, normal spellcasting is late.
Yeah, some of that is
There's in Savage Worlds, there's a power called Super Sorcery, which you can do any superpower in the entire book, and so you wind up with that same kind of experience too. Brutal.
I don't know. I like the Dresden Files magic system. It works really well.
Yeah.
Is the fix for that, but we'll talk about that later.
Chris.
Hey, so I got a microphone that works now.
There we go.
How exciting. So grappling from 3.5.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, why would you do that to anybody?
Grappling such a 3.5 grappling was so difficult. We actually, back in almost the same time in 2015, dedicated a whole show to the problems of grappling.
We did. I think it was episode 150. No, that was
150 is the
Bard episode.
Yeah,
there was an
Bard
encumbrance episode, but then there was a grappling episode. Yeah, so I mean, come on, that list, like the grappling rules are almost as long as the combat rules.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, first it's provoke an attack of opportunity.
Yeah.
Make a touch attack. Make a contested strength roll. Like, yeah.
Then you start getting feats involved, and then it messes with all of that stuff. It's crazy. All right, so what's the next thing?
So it's hey, look, it's purple. I lost track of myself. Hey, well, now that I'm back on board with the podcast, so using your skills as designers, how would you fix the latency problem in the games that you mentioned? So we'll start with you, Chris. 3.5 grapple.
Yeah, so you can do what Pathfinder did, which was make combat modifier bonus, which fixed a lot of problems with, if you like that kind of playstyle, like it fixed a ton of those problems. Or you can just do what 5th edition did and make it a condition. Let me tell you about, when you're grappled, you have the grapple condition. So you all remember the 3.5 grappling rules, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to read you because it's going to take 35 to 45 seconds, the 5th edition grappling rules.
Let's hear it.
All right. When you want to grab a creature or wrestle with it, you can use the attack action to make a special melee attack a grapple. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action, this attack replaces one of them. The target of your grapple must be no more than one size larger than you and must be within your reach. Using at least one free hand, you try to seize the target by making a grapple check instead of an attack roll. A strength athletics check contested by a target's strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics check. The target chooses the ability to use. You succeed automatically if the target is incapacitated. If you succeed, you subject the target to the grapple condition. The condition specifies the things that end it, and you can release the target whenever you like. No action required.
That's neat. That's neat and tidy.
Way shorter.
Only took what? It only took an edition and a half to 2 editions.
4th edition wasn't bad either.
Yeah, that one's actually really good.
Yeah, and then there's like the couple things that go along with it. It's like escaping a grapple. Basically, take an action to escape. Succeed in a strength, athletics, or dexterity acrobatics check contested by the opponent's strength check. Right? Or moving a grappled creature. You move at half speed.
Yeah,
that's it. Those are the rules for grappling in 5th edition.
That's a much better,
which is a way crunchier game than a lot of story games.
Sure.
But that's way simpler.
That is way simpler.
Yeah. So
that actually would be worth doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, there's some really cool things in design for that. You know, I've designed a fair amount of D&D adventures for 5th edition, like grabbing a creature and moving them into specific places. Like that's there's tactical advantages to doing stuff like that, like throwing them off a cliff, right? You know, like stuff like that.
I would not have done that in 3.5.
Let me grab a vampire and stick it in, running water,
water,
that too.
Awesome, I like that.
So there you go. Camden, what about you?
So literally anything would have been better. You could use playing cards like they do in Deadlands or Savage Worlds, a D20 add your initiative bonus. You could have just gone around the table in order, just start with somebody and worked your way clockwise or counterclockwise.
There are dozens and dozens of better ways to handle it.
Almost any initiative system would have improved what was going on.
I think that, and maybe this, I'll just say this. I won't generalize it. I will say for me, the moment you have to bring spreadsheets out for your game, like I'm out.
Yeah.
Like if I've got a hard no, we're gonna need some spreadsheets here. Like that's a pass for me.
That was the same game where somebody knocked the villain out while we were all flying. And so several of us said we want to catch them before they hit the ground and die.
Sure.
And the person who was facilitating the game said, well, let me do the math and see whether you can do that in the number of stories, figuring for terminal velocity. And we're like, we'll sacrifice whatever we need to.
Yeah. To answer Senda, I keep my spreadsheets at the office.
That's fair.
Spreadsheets at the office, not at the game.
That's a good place.
Yeah.
I feel like there are better ways if you want to design a game that feels realistic and gritty.
Absolutely. Much.
Because it sounds like that's what that person was going for, but that is not the way that design works these days.
One, it's a superheroes game. 2, that slowed it down for another 20 minutes while they did the math for that. 2 people doing the math to figure that out. But anyway, that's my story. Phil, how about you?
I mean, you are not wrong. Like anything... I will say this. First of all, I don't like when people recalculate. For most games, do not like recalculating initiative turn by turn. Savage Worlds being the only exception, and because that throwing cards at people is super easy.
Yep.
I don't like that at all. Okay. We actually talked a little bit about it. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but if you listen to the Gangbuster episode, you also listened to the one after it where we actually went through and gave our fixes for the game. And I think the fastest way to get rid of that 10-step problem is to just move to something with a move and action economy. Like you get a move, you can take an action and a free action, and if one of those actions is shoot, roll some dice. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's how I played the game in 6th grade when it first came out, because I think I read the 10 steps and was like, nope, can't do that. Hey, just roll and see if you shoot that guy. So I would just reduce it to that. I think you'll get more enjoyment out of it, and it'll go way faster.
Yep, that sounds fantastic.
Bob?
Yeah, so if you really don't want to go with the canned spells like D&D has, Pathfinder, where it's like, this is the spell and this is what it does, period, end of story, and just pick from this list, I mean, there's got to be a way that you could put together like a template kind of a thing where you can cookie cutter and just swap out the duration or swap out the effect for something else, or just reflavor things where, the text says X, and you just kind of skin that to look the way you want it to look. I mean, there's,
No, I agree. I think that onus is on that player.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting this cool menu system, like it's on you to hold down the latency on that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to sit there with all those options and build everything individually on the fly every time.
No, not every time. You really should have a little grimoire that's like, here's my force bolt, with the only differences of whether I want to do the D6, the D8, or the D10.
Yeah. Or this time it's fire, next time it's cold.
Yeah.
That's.
I agree.
Or you just do what Fate did, and it was like, there's a ladder, and these things are certainly difficult in some way, shape, or form, and then you have some restrictions based on like what elements you can actually utilize well, and then you just kind of easily put it together. Like, well, what are you trying to do? Create a wall of fire. Well, that sounds like creating advantage.
There you go.
With magic, right?
Yep.
Like, and then if anybody walks into the fire, they'll take some sort of damage from it.
Yep.
But that's
Yeah, I mean, Fate
it's essentially what you said.
Yeah.
Like, it is the design. If you want to look for an example in the design world of what that is, that's a very good example in the design world of what that is.
And that's very much tapping into the mechanics of the game, because what you said works perfectly well on the Fate chassis because create advantage exists, and because not only that, but the concept of a aspect is always narratively true and mechanically important. Takes advantage of the fact that if I create wall of fire, and you touch it,
it's fire.
Right. I get to call in everything about wall of fire. But if we're playing something like D&D 3.5, you had to like the technical parts of getting that spell were so much, it's wall of fire, but how many squares of wall of fire? How high is wall of fire?
Yeah.
Well, that's why D&D has its advancing and spellcasting system.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Rule bundles, like prescribed
predefined
bundles.
Yeah.
Prefab bundles. I mean, we used a similar system in Iron Heroes, and I think what saved us was that Mike was so willing to actually go home and make
he
dozens
made
of spells,
a bunch of different stuff.
Right. It never felt like that because he had like a cookbook of these things.
He went and prepackaged a bunch of spells.
He did. Exactly. He did, and it was great for that because he got exactly what he wanted. He got the flavor of the kind of wizard he wanted to play. But he did us a favor latency wise by bundling them. And only occasionally when something like he would like, I could modify this to like cover this situation. Would he have to actually stop and scratch out a little map?
He went and did the homework.
He did.
It's like the same rules should apply that when you're at a restaurant with counter service. Know what you want before you get up to the front of the line.
Don't stand.
You're looking at me?
No, I'm not. I'm just looking around. I was
actually reading a thread on Twitter about that today.
Yeah,
that's actually like one of my. I mean, I as a quick aside, that is actually like one of my phobias. Like, I am terrified to go up to a counter and not know what to order. I'm actually nervous about not knowing what to order when we sit down, like at a sit down restaurant. But a counter restaurant, forget it. Like, if I will check a menu before I go because I do not want to be that person.
No, I get that.
That's way too much pressure for me. If there's like a line of people behind me, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, and I think that same level of consideration inside of games is
I agree.
important too.
Cool.
All right, let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
Right. So the Gnomecast. That's a show on Misdirected Mark Productions.
That's a show.
It sure is. Several gnomes from Gnomes 2 get together to talk about gaming topics and themselves in an effort to entertain you and avoid being thrown into the stew. Although if you watch or listen to certain episodes, you've realized that we've all been thrown into the stew and we're all just clones.
Spoiler.
It was like a year ago. It was actually a year ago because it was the April Fool's episode last year.
Spoiler.
Angie's yelling at us. Angie's yelling at us. You've all been on it.
We've all been on it. That's true, actually. Oh, man. Is there anything in the chat room, buddy?
No, we're good.
Okay, well.
Somebody mentioned Twilight 2000. You want to talk about another game with latency? I tried reading Twilight 2000 when it came out, but like this was the problem. Like all these games came out like when I was in 6th, 7th grade, and I bought them, and then I would like get them home and try to read them, and I'd be like, "What? Like, what is happening?
What the what?"
Oh yeah. So I have so many games that like I tried so hard. Villains and Vigilantes. I never grokked. Twilight 2000. I never grokked. Like I just like they were so monotonous.
I thought V&V was a less latency game. Like there was less mechanics to the procedure. I don't remember. I never played it.
There is.
Read it.
It is. I just never grokked how the table worked. There's like one table that's like super important, but I never quite got it. So just didn't work.
Are there any table games worth playing anymore? where
What's
like
that?
the core mechanic is on a table, like
Phase
the core resolution. I mean, phase rip.
Phase rip. I think phase rip's probably still fun.
I can't think of anything else.
Although I will
Um,
say this: for the 3 times I've tried to read phase rip, I'm like, man, this book's long. Like,
Yeah.
wait, we're not there yet. Oh man.
Unsurprisingly, people were running it at GaryCon 2017 when I was there, and I played it. It was a challenging table, but it wasn't the worst game that I played
No,
there.
no. I actually,
Wow, I don't know if that's saying good things about phase rip or bad things about the rest of the games you played there.
Yes,
I'm
was
fairly
fun.
confident if we ran phase rip, it would actually be pretty good.
I
Like,
mean,
I don't think that game's not busted.
I've played it before. It's fun.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy it. It's very, when I played it, I'm like, man, this is like an old game. Like, it's going to be terrible, like super latent, and like there's going to be all sorts of like waiting around for things to happen. I'm like, no, we just roll dice, and then there was like interpretation based on color.
You need a little bit of time to do the lookup. That's really the latency in that game is like you roll, you got to, anything with the table, right? You got to cross reference, you got to
Mhm.
find the thing, and then the color is easy, right? Because there's just 3 of them, but each one means something different for the action you're taking. So then you have to like go down to the bottom thing and like go through and okay for this action.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I played it not according to rules then.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
You
that.
might have played basic. So there was 2 versions of that game. The yellow rulebook basic, which was the first one released, and then there was the advanced one that came out a year or 2 later. I was referring to the advanced one.
Okay, I
The
think
advanced
I
one,
have
the
no
advanced
idea
was
what
a
version
little
I played.
more.
Yeah,
had a little more meat on it.
We actually all had our own little individual spreadsheet, color coded things that we had to look everything up on.
Then when I played it, my character was on a printed out like Word piece of
Sure.
white paper with
Sure.
just some stats on it. I'm like, okay, let's play, and that's what we did.
I will tell you the most gruesome table that I've ever seen is original Top Secret, the martial arts table. I don't even know. I can't even tell you what it means, but somehow when you fought somebody with martial arts, there's a table, you cross-reference things, it gives you a letter, it takes you to another table, and then you do something with the letter. I have no idea.
That hurts my heart.
I could show it to you, but even
It just hurts my head.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Anyways.
reason why they went and remade that game twice.
Yes.
All
And then
right,
made it into Savage Worlds.
so let's get back into the topic. We're gonna stay on the topic of bad latency for just a moment more and ask this
Bad
last
latency.
question about
Bad
bad
latency. Sorry, what?
It's not. That's. I don't think.
That's not. Go to the corner.
Did you
Bad
hear?
latency.
Did you hear Camden's uncomfortable giggle there? That's where we just went to. Like, wait till the after show, man.
I'm sorry.
Just wait till the after show.
I'm Phil. I'm
I'm-
disgusting.
You're not disgusting.
Do you know
You're
that?
actually-
Do you know that Friends reference?
No, I don't know that.
Oh, it's from the episode. I'll tell it later.
Yes,
it's
side
a
tangent.
Friends reference.
All
I'm
right.
Joey. I'm disgusting.
Oh, so what table advice do you have for helping to reduce latency at the table, Phil?
I like cheat sheets. I love cheat sheets
Phil
because
loves cheat sheets.
cheat
Phil's
sheets
good
are
at cheat sheets.
cheat sheets are my jam because I feel like when you have latency, one way to get around latency is if you have the rules directly accessible. So if you, for instance, if we're playing face rip, I want everyone at the table to have the face rip table right in front of them,
Mhm.
so that they're not trying to get to the one in the center of the table or the one on the back of the GM screen, like back in the old days. Like,
Laminated.
yes, well, laminated if I'm sure I'm done messing with the cheat sheet. Like if it's someone else's cheat sheets, I will print them and laminate them. If it's ones I've made, I go 1 or 2 games without laminating them until I'm sure that the content's good, like everything's on there, and then I laminate them. Like,
Nice.
yeah, I do. I will make my own. We've talked about it, right? I will make my own, and I've gotten ridiculous. Like I used to make them by cutting the like literally screen capping and cutting the things out of the book. But now, like I gotta like go and make them, like find the fonts, and it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
you
Like,
are really good about that.
Yeah. I know. I just gave you a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, for Scum
Mhm.
and Villainy, which we're about to start playing.
You can laminate those, by the way. I ran them. They're good.
I mean, they're going to be used on Roll20, so I'm not going to laminate them. I'm just
Yeah.
going to make them digitally. And
They're going to
stick
be
them
virtually
in-
laminated.
Yeah, virtually laminated.
Virtually laminated. That's gonna be my next band.
Camden, how about you?
So from the designer side of things, I think that being thoughtful in what the play experience and interaction is going to be like when actual humans are doing it is super, super important.
Mhm.
So think about, what kind of pressure are you putting on the different players for those experiences? Like some things ask a lot and ask it immediately. So, I mean, certainly PBTA games, there's a lot of demand on that. Okay, great. Like, what does that look like? What is, you're asking for their immediate feedback. And not that I think that that's a problem. But some systems, I mean, it's the entire game is designed like that purposefully. When there are times when games will ask you to do math or go over a spreadsheet or do these things that maybe not everybody is going to be able to do because they're neuroatypical or whatever else, and there isn't a whole lot of thought put in from the design aspect. And I think the flip side of that is if you're facilitating a game, know your system so that you're not always going to the books and looking things up. And that's where I think that things like cheat sheets come in super.
Yeah, mechanical mastery is a big deal.
Yeah,
I will say that we here on the show have a word, an adjective that we sometimes use to describe games, which is mathy. And mathy is usually a hint. You need to go back and redesign something. Like, oh, that's it's a fun play, but it's a little mathy. That's usually not a good sign.
Yep.
Unless the math is part of the fun of the game. Or the point of the game.
I cite Relic Hunters.
Yeah, Relic Hunters was a mathy game.
Was mathy.
Yeah, that first version, the Plunder Dice, was a mathy game.
Yes, Plunder Dice was a mathy game. And we
used to make people add single digit and 10-digit numbers together per round. Then we're like, this is dumb. Let's get some tokens.
I would have just given you all a hug and walked away. I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, those are things that you thought about it. You play tested it. You saw the experience, and you went back.
We sent it out to people that play tested it and told us the same thing.
It was a lot of math.
It was hilarious.
If you have to have a score sheet to keep tally,
if you have to get your phone out to start adding up numbers between rounds, your game is math.
Some games are okay though for that. Like Sushi Go has that, but it's so fast.
But it's only at the end though. Right?
No, you have to add up each round. And it's 3 rounds.
You do.
Yeah.
Like some games are okay for that.
Yeah.
Those numbers aren't big though.
No, they're not big.
Yeah.
I mean, there were games.
Relic Hunters was ridiculous.
Yeah, we had. I mean, Plunder Dice had games that were going
ridiculous.
into like 1,000.
Yeah.
It was bad.
That is bad mathy.
Right.
I'm not sure on the role playing game side of things for design where bad mathy gets to. To me, bad mathy is like upper level Pathfinder and upper level 3.5 D&D. Like there's too many stackable bonuses that I have to add.
Yeah, I will tell you a bad one because Grant Howitt once did the 10 mechanics in Shadowrun that he hates the most. And there is a rule. I don't know if it persists in the last version of Shadowrun, but there is a rule for explosions in confined spaces that takes the math of a volumetric distribution of an explosion.
Oh yeah.
And starts figuring out like how many dice damage it does to people within this part of the tube. This whatever. It's ridiculous.
Just
and
play
literally
Shadowrun Anarchy.
And literally Grant's like, there are elves in this game. Like what? Why this math?
Yeah. I don't understand what that. So you want something to feel a certain way in a game, and then you decide to come up with a subsystem that requires you to take 12 minutes to figure out how to do the math. Like I don't know. I just don't understand why the design behind that. I'd like to see the design notes on that. Like what was the purpose?
Yeah, really.
I'm pretty sure it started as a fight at the table about whether your dwarf would live if the grenade went off in the sewer, and then like somebody was like, I'll show you why you can't, right? Because the force traveling down the cement tunnel, and then like it became a rule.
Yeah. There were similar
I'm only
arguments
hypothesizing,
in D&D.
but I feel like that's probably
there were similar arguments in D&D with the fireball. You throw a fireball that's got a 30-foot radius into a room that's 20 by 20, and everybody's like, well, it's going to splash out into the hallway. And
I don't care about the physics because it's a magic.
Physics is not something you want to bring in there.
I mean, once you start using magic, like, are we going to get into the magic of physics?
Yeah.
Or the physics of magic? Like,
it's just
magic. I have no doubt.
To Uvvy's point, I did pass trig, and I was like 3 credits away from a minor in mathematics. Like I'm not unaccustomed to calculating the distribution of things in a fixed volume.
Yeah, it's not
I'm just
that big a
saying
deal.
Not in my game.
Correct.
Again.
Yeah.
Yes, I love myself too much. So
if I need my TI calculator.
Yeah, I don't need to do a trig problem to figure out like where the fireball's going to. I mean, that's why I have game masters to make rulings if I need something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Blake Ryan brought up does the D&D lightning bolt work underwater? Or if you throw a lightning bolt at a person in the water, does everybody else who's in the water get electrical damage?
Let me say this is why 5th edition is a wonderfully thought through design game. It's because the designers of the game were like, yeah, we made a bunch of like frameworks for play, and we're like, all right, when things happen that are not covered by the rules, just make a ruling that makes sense. It says it right in the instructions, everyone. Like they went that way.
Well, they got rid of the argument phase.
They went away. Yeah, they went away from the. They went away from that. They went away from that 3.5 system where it's like, here's a rule for everything that we can possibly put in, so you don't have to make as many rulings. To like, all right, go be game masters again.
Is that a form of latency?
It is. Well, and that's what I was talking about with player based, where the mechanics and player.
Yeah.
So you've got initiative, you've got a declaration of your turn, you've got the argument phase.
Right. Yeah, I believe that's how war games are actually organized. Like war games have an argument phase right in the middle.
Yeah, and it's funny because I only talk really mostly about like D&D 5th edition in reference to previous versions of D&D, like because other games are doing very different things.
No, 5th edition has actually done. I don't play it, but 5th edition has done a remarkable.
They did a nice job of cleaning up.
They got rid of a lot of things that I would consider problems in 3.5.
Well, they went away from crazy subsystems for the most part, and there are rules in the game. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like these things do certain things, but like they also give you the flexibility to be like, well, that's being used in a strange way that we didn't account for. Make a ruling.
Make a ruling and move
Make
on.
a ruling is great. I love make a ruling.
Speaking of making a ruling,
yes,
to dovetail into the rest of that discussion.
There you. I was going to throw it to you. Good job.
That was where I was going with my comments on this reducing latency at the table is system knowledge.
Didn't even read it.
That's right. Know the system, and if you run into a question where if you're all at the table not sure what the answer is, make a ruling and then move on and figure it out after the session. Go off.
I say crazy subsystems.
Yeah.
Problematic subsystems. Problematic subsystems. Sorry about that.
Good job.
Yes.
Good job.
Thank you for calling it out.
We are definitely working.
Yep.
I will say having been I was a DJ in college. I had an FCC license, and that is like the one thing they beat into you when you are on the air is like no dead air. Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's my feeling about rulings is like if I start to reach for the book. Now I will make one exception. If I'm learning the game in the first couple sessions, I will reach for the book because I'm like, well, I want to make sure we're doing this correctly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if it's if I've run the game a bunch and we've hit some fringe rule, then I'm all for let's make a ruling. Let's go. We'll go look it up later.
Doing it this way. Boom.
Yep.
We'll figure it out later.
And I think that's one of the things that new game facilitators, GMs, DMs need to learn is to have the confidence to make that call. Just believe in yourself. Make it. Everyone should be on board, and they're more likely to be on board if you have the confidence that that is your duty inside this.
Yeah, I mean,
game.
If you can make it within the framework of the game, that's great. If not, make it in the framework of what makes sense in the story.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true.
Yep. And I'm always a big proponent of game books giving the game facilitators letting them know you should be doing this. Like this, it's okay to be doing this.
I think it's actually I do think it's important.
There's a lot of game books that don't do that. That's why.
Sure.
Now I will say that we argued about this in a previous episode. We don't have to get into it tonight, but I do have a line of I think we were both on the same line of this. I do not like the hey, ignore the rules and just make up whatever you want. I make a ruling when you're stuck, but I wrote you these rules. I wrote you these rules. Please try to use them.
Well, you make a ruling based on the rules that are existing, right, and the fiction that is being presented.
Yes.
Yeah. There are still the surrounding situational constraints that go along with that. And hopefully, you are doing it within the context of the game that's being presented. It's still if I'm playing D&D, I'm still going to roll a d20. We're still going to add a modifier. We're still using that rule.
Exactly.
And then we'll make a call based on what the existing, make a call based on what just happened.
Yeah, I really like. There's a in that Veil 2020.
Yep.
And I think it's in World of Dungeons as well. There's the Die of Fate. It's just a D6.
Fate.
And so when the GM doesn't know the answer to a question, you just roll the Die of Fate. And a 1 means it probably doesn't go well, and a 6 means it goes well. And
with varying in between. Yeah,
and so you're just I forget what happened in the game that we were playing, but there was a question, and I was like, boy, I don't know. I'm I don't know if it was something about getting useful information or something, and I was like, it
was the question about prior to we hadn't asked the question of whether or not the relationship between the manager for the current manager and her husband had a good relationship.
Yes.
And so it was like, if they have a bad relationship, I can leverage this information that I have now. And he's like, well, let's find out. Let's roll the Die of Fate.
Super great. I don't know. I don't want to make this decision. Die of fate.
See, that's a neat mechanic.
I would just package it up and hand it to GMs for any game.
And in the
Listen, when you don't
context
know,
of
just roll
the
this
rest
die.
of the rules of that game, it's a quick and easy boom, boom, boom. Keep the game moving.
I actually have a coin that says yes on one side and no on
Yeah.
the other. I hand it. It was like, flip it. Coin to destiny. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's just the same concept.
Exactly.
All right.
Cool.
So,
I get to
Chris,
Yeah.
How about you, Chris?
So, I mean, in a pinch, you can house rule a thing.
Yeah, totally.
Like that is a thing that you can do because this is about at the table, not about design.
Yep.
Right. This is about. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
At the table.
Yeah, for helping. So that's one thing you do. Just a house rule thing, real quick. And of course, when you house rule it, that's sort of like making a ruling. Like, well, we're gonna do this one time. Maybe it won't be the thing that sticks around for forever, but it works for now to keep the game moving along. The other thing that you can do, and then of course that could turn into a sustainable rule if it really works for that game and that group, and that particular campaign that you're playing or game that you're playing. The other thing is you can establish protocols for moving things along. So like pre-rolling your initiative, and there's like some ways you can do that. Like, well, everyone just pre-roll your initiative and write it down like 5 times.
Yep.
And we'll just go in order for each one of the things that we're doing. And if you don't like that, if it feels not random enough, like you can be like, all right, everyone, pre-roll your initiative. I'm going to write all of your initiatives on like separate index cards or whatever, and then I'll just shuffle them up so that when a thing comes up, and I don't mean like individually shuffle them up, so I'll have like my little stacks of index cards for each person. Like, well, here's the ones that I'm going to pick out for this one. Like, then that way they're still randomized, but they're still there. So like I already have my initiative rolled. Like that is a trick that you can use to get a game moving quicker. The other thing, like in a D&D game with mechanics and adding numbers and whatnot, like roll your damage and your attack roll at the same time, even though that's not really a thing that usually happens.
Always a good one.
Heck, if you know what you're going to do, you can do it before your turn even rolls up.
Yeah.
Some GMs may or may
Some
not.
GMs don't
it
like
depends
that.
on the trust level.
Yeah.
of the team.
Yeah.
You had a thing that you used to do where we would roll a bunch of D20 rolls in advance,
Oh, all your spot checks.
and you put them down on a piece of paper, and then we did like 10 of them or 20 of them. We did 20 D20 rolls, and then he would put them listed down in D20 order, and then he would roll a D20 and be like, oh, that was a 15 for you on that one. And that would be the random.
I didn't do that for latency. I did that so that
No,
you didn't
but-
do the like make a spot check. Oh, I rolled a 1. Like
Yeah.
everybody quick, take defensive positions. I rolled a 1, right?
Yeah.
I would just roll the 20 behind the screen and I'd be like, "Oh, you noticed the following." Like it wasn't as much of a latency thing as it was
Yeah.
Talk about a latency inducing thing in a game though, like the how do you proceed through searching through a dungeon so you don't spring traps.
Yeah.
Like, I mean my fix has always been like, all right, who's taking point on traps? All right, I will have you roll a perception check when there's something present to notice, and if you notice it, then I tell you. If you don't notice it, then you spring the trap. Like
it's a tough one because I mean an OSR game would literally be like, okay, describe to me.
well, certain games have different mechanics. Like BX is about turns actually mean something in that game.
Right.
I think it's turns or rounds. Like one of them is 10 minutes. Like you do something for 10 minutes, and then like what do you do for the 10 minutes, and what do you do for the 10 minutes, and it's really drawing a map.
Yeah.
On a piece of grid paper and moving through it. Like that was how you played that game.
I remember.
Which is neat. Like if that's a cool kind of experience to have playing a game. It is not like the story-based freewheeling nature of Dungeon World.
No.
But it is a kind of playstyle that I can actually very much get behind and appreciate.
That is that experience is my first experience to D&D was when I was a kid. The people's house we were living in, the older kid was upstairs playing I think it was like D1 or 2 or something, one of the ones Descent into the Drow, and they were doing it full on. Like they had a mapper, they had somebody who was managing like the turns on the torches and how many torches they had, and I mean it was a fairly big table, and they were doing all of that, and I thought it was fascinating. Like they were, they had like a big piece of graph paper on the table, and the GM would be like, you come to an intersection, it goes north, and they on the table draw it out, and I mean that's how I got sucked into the game. But today I would do that for fun, like for a one shot or a small arc, but it's not my jam right now.
It's not.
But I would do it just for nostalgia's sake.
Definitely not the kind of game Camden wants to play.
No, it's
I mean, I want to play. I still want to play Torchbearer. Like Torchbearer is that BX thing to an extreme. Like it's all about the choices. What I find fascinating is it's a little mechanically crunchy, but it's all about the choices of what are you going to carry, what are you going to keep, how are you going to survive.
I got that book. I will eventually break it out and learn it.
And they
run it.
help latency by they have cards. as
They do.
aids to kind of
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
manage that kind of minutia. Anyway, yeah, cool.
All right. Next thing.
Yeah, so Camden, you
Yes.
talked about good latency.
Yes.
The times when slowing down a game is actually a good thing.
Mhm.
So loaded question. Talk about two games. Talk about two games where you have seen the positive use for latency.
All right. So the first is Dialect.
Yeah,
Again,
Dialect, that's a great game.
It is a great game, which I'm a huge fan of, and the way that they use their transition scene, and as well as the physical components on the table to really reorder things. I think that's really smart. I think it sets you up to really understand that we have moved from one time to the other.
Mhm.
It gives people a chance to talk and communicate outside of those moments as well. And another game is a game called One Child's Heart. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
I have.
I have heard of it. I don't
Played it a few
I
times.
mean, we
With
the
talked about it a
designer.
little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
I hear that designer's a pretty okay guy.
I don't know. It's probably a jerk. You never believe the hype.
You know what they say about your heroes.
Yeah, true story. One Child's Heart is specifically designed with breaks in the gameplay as a safety mechanic to give people a chance to debrief and de-escalate, and both in and out of character, to have that time to step back from the intense gameplay, take a breath, take care of themselves, and then get back into it.
What I really like is that it does a couple things. One, you can't, like, the way you have it set up, you can't do anything for the child. Like, you are out of the dream space. So there's no bleeding back into it. Like,
Nope.
you're out. And then what's really interesting is that what happens after is a metaphor for what is happening in real life, which is like, go get a drink of water, come down, because that's exactly like you return to the break room, because you always describe it. The break room is always like, it has water and snacks and drinks, and it is very much the same thing. Like, you're conveying that in game and at a meta level as well. Like, get a drink, talk about this. When we're ready, we're going back in.
Yeah.
It's really smart.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. So, Phil, what about you?
So, not intentionally, but discovered it through playtesting. Turning Point has a very similar effect, that the turn structure in Turning Point uses. So the turns are called moments, where you play out individual scenes. But the way we play is that after you've done one moment, a new player embodies the character, and a different player will embody the NPC, and the player who's going to be playing the character gets to pick from the remaining moments which one they want to do next, and that whole activity stops everything to de-escalate. So, and the other thing it does is it immediately moves the character role off of the person who just played it. So if they had a really intense scene, it comes right off of them to somebody else. And this just happened at Breakout. We finished this really intense scene, and the person who came out, who handed off the character, was like, here's the character, and I also don't want to play the NPC this scene. Like, I would just like to play the psyche and just sit back and watch the next scene. And they were able to kind of take themselves out to de-escalate. And two other people were like, great, we're in. Okay. We'll take it and go from here. And that was not intentional, but it was one of those things that after we watched it played, Senda and I were talking about it, and we were like, oh yeah, it de-escalates in a really good way, on a couple different levels. So not intentional, but definitely one of those very serendipitous things that happen during design.
That's awesome.
Cool. Chris.
So Forged in the Dark games, they're really an interesting case because they have those phases of play, and each of those phases, the way that they're designed, have different kinds of latency built into them, which create different tones. So that is a really good example of how you can use latency to help design tone and pacing in your game. So for instance, that when you're on a score, the flow of the game is much more in the game master's hands and the fiction's hands, bouncing back and forth. It feels more like a Power by the Apocalypse game at that point.
And the scores are really intense. Like it, I
It's
mean, you're
very
racking
intense.
up stress.
Yep.
It's a really intense portion of play.
And the flow that goes with it, though, is about like the game master is like pointing out scenes, right? They're like highlighting things. But when you get to downtime, you have downtime points that you basically spend. So it feels a lot more like Burning Wheel, right? Like Mouse Guard has this thing where you have these check marks that you can then spend in this phase of play. They call it the player phase. In a Forged in the Dark game, it's called downtime for the most part. I think it's pretty much called downtime in all of them as far as I've been able to see. So like you're spending a point, then you're spending a point, and we're just kind of going around until all the points are spent, which is a very different feel and tone and flavor of play. And latency has a lot to do with that because it's not this freewheeling sort of intense situation that is very focused. It's more this spread out thing too. And the latency helps make it feel that way based on how the points are spent compared to being right in the middle of the action and more of a cinematic feel.
Yeah, I think that game. I think that game, Blades and Scum of Villainy and all the other ones that are coming out shortly, I think do a really nice job of. There are 3 phases. So if you play Orthodox, if you play to the rules, you do all 3 phases. So you do that free phase, which is a lot of just talking and like good character interaction. Then you do a score, which is like the tense actiony part, and then you do the downtime, which is a little less role play. It's a little more mechanical, but it winds up getting you good stuff like for the next cycle. And then you can play like depending on the speed of a game. Like sometimes you can get like a whole cycle, even a cycle and a little bit more in the course of a game. But it creates natural breakpoints. It changes. It allows tone to change. I like it. I have other issues with that style game, but. In terms of cognitive load, but other than that, I like how that's laid out.
Chris, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So do you think that Swords Without Master captures that same type of feeling in the same way? Do you think it plays with the latency, or do you think that the structure is different enough that it doesn't capture that?
I don't think that the latency helps set the tone. I think the procedure sets the tone because in one, so yeah, that's actually so that's my thesis on that. I guess if I'm going to break it down, why that is, it's all so similar that it feels the same throughout Swords as far as like a latency thing goes, but the thing with the game master holding onto the dice, the story, what do they call the overplayer holding onto the dice while things are going terrible, or no, not the overplayer. When a player is holding on the dice while the overplayer is making things more and more terrible and terrible and terrible. I mean, I guess that's a kind of narrative latency. So I guess maybe it does shift how that goes because you are putting a lot more. It's a good question.
There's definitely turn latency in Swords because. Especially like you're talking about the perilous phase where the player holds onto the dice and they slip and slide against the overplayer until they roll the dice. The longer that player holds the dice, the longer it takes for everyone else to get a turn.
It's true, but that also creates narrative latency.
Yeah.
I mean, it is actually creating a narrative stretch too. Because the longer and longer a player holds on to those dice, the more and more the overplayer has to make things worse and worse and worse. And that can be a strain, and it also is like I said, it's narrative latency. But when you flip it to the other side, when it's what's the other phase when the rogues are being awesome?
The rogues phase.
The rogues phase, like it is. I'm gonna ask you a question, and then we're gonna roll the dice, and we're just gonna narrate until that part's done. And that is a different kind of latency on the game because you're not forcing anybody to keep talking. Because when they're done, they're done. Yeah. So those are there's a. It's a different kind of narrative latency. It's a different kind of latency, but it still exists. I think they're different enough that they're not as comparable.
Okay.
Because that is an interesting case because the vast majority of the latency in Swords Without Master is variable. Whereas most of the other stuff that we've been talking about is more level.
I mean, all of the latency in Swords Without Master, or at least like 80% of it, is narrative.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Because-
so's like 80% of the game.
Yeah.
That's 100%
Yeah.
true.
But the mechanics, like, they actually create that. The
Right.
only other latency that ever popped up is like, oh, what do we do for a stymie? Good thing we have the sheets.
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
rules-
is it a
that's rules
mystery or a
mastery, yeah.
stymie? Like,
Yeah.
that's the other side of latency in that game, and that's the bad latency, right? But like the narrative latency, I think is actually good latency because it does create the holding on of the dice
Mhm.
creates tension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The other things don't create really tension. It's the dice roll that creates the tension, and they're like, oh, it's a mystery. What do we do with that, right?
Mhm.
But Forge in the Dark games, my limited experience with them, I've played a number of sessions, but not nearly as many as Phil. They have very different mechanical implementations to create those different latency tones.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very procedural game. It's like way more procedural than I think when you first see it.
I think Swords is actually the more procedural game.
Swords is very procedural in that everything about the game is procedural, right? Like
Mhm.
like when to hold the dice, when to roll the dice, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
But Blades has plenty. I mean, it has one free phase. That's
Yep.
the only phase of the game where you basically just wing it.
Uh-huh.
The score is very mechanical.
It's less mechanical than I thought it was.
I think you still make a bunch of rolls.
You do make a bunch of rolls, but it feels the score phase looks like a Powered by the Apocalypse game to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you get into the after the score,
The
you get
downtime.
That's very, very mechanical.
Yeah, it is basically like you have a point to create a scene. I mean, that's like, let me spend my resource to have a scene. That's
If
actually what
if
the
it's
game
even a
is.
scene, I mean, sometimes it's like, all right, so tell me what you're doing to research your clock, to push your clock forward.
Sure.
Okay,
I mean,
roll.
it's essentially, it doesn't have to be a scene, but
Yeah.
it is essentially like a scene of thing because I want some. I would always say you should give me some fiction for that. Like
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
because otherwise, what's
Yeah.
it's a role playing game, right? Like
Mhm.
it's a storytelling game. That if there's no story being told,
Tell
then-
me about how you do that, or tell me about how that comes down.
It could even be like I am sitting at my desk for a week reading books.
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
the moment of getting up and going to the bathroom and getting food now and again, I'm like, all right, you've sequestered yourself for a week, so cool. I know that you probably don't know anything else that's going on for that past week.
Yeah, gain
But
an
this-
experience point.
Yeah, gain your experience point. Like you have no idea, like all the other things that have been happening around you. So whenever you find it out, it's kind of news to you. Like
think-
because that provides fictional positioning for things going forward.
Somewhere in the past, we took apart Swords Without Master, didn't we?
We did, and we played it.
Yeah, we should do that again now that Camden's here. At some point.
Do another exploratory play of Swords Without Master.
I mean, I don't think we can go wrong playing that.
I mean,
game
we had a
sometimes.
hard time with it.
That is the one fantasy game I'll actually happily play.
I love that game.
All right, so getting back on topic. So, what ways can we design latency into our games that have that positive effect, Phil? We'll start with you.
I'll go back to the thing I've kind of been going with all along, which is structuring order of play. Like
Mhm.
I actually do like games with phases.
Mhm.
Hydra Hackers has phases built into it. Turning Point actually has a couple of phases. There's a starting phase. There's the the middle piece, and then like the finale. Like it actually does have some phases to play as well. I like those a lot. That works for me because I'm super structured and rigid. So,
Fair.
so I'm good like that. Chris?
Strangely enough, for me, it's the fact that it creates a feel and a tone for play. Like, I mean, that structure, whatever that structure might be, like it makes things feel different, and I like that. Like, I like having beat. I love storytelling, so I like having different beats in games to help tell stories.
Mhm.
And sometimes where it's like, well, you can create the scenes yourself for yourself as much as or as little as you want. If you want this to be like the sort of montagey thing or whatever, like, or you just want 5 seconds of screen time, you can have it, and then you can go back and have this thing where the camera is really controlled by the facilitator. I love controlling the camera as the facilitator, but I also like letting people set up their own stuff. So when I have a game that can do both of those things, it's kind of neat, which is why I'm really excited about Blades. And that's the revelation that I came to from this topic this time around. I'm like, you can design tone and pacing like by a lot more than I thought you could. Because I've always been like, well, let's just jam around the tone and pacing. But nope, you can totally design tone and pacing.
Yeah.
Way more than I thought you could. And man, if you didn't notice, like pacing has a lot to do with tone and feel of a story.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like
of course.
a noir story, a really well executed noir story has a very, very different tone than a really well executed two-fisted pulp adventure story.
I mean, you're talking to somebody who loves genres,
Yeah.
genre emulation, right? Like I'm always like I always rate my games in terms of how well does this game emulate the genre that I wanted to play.
So latency can have a lot to do with that.
Oh, totally.
Like it can slow things down to a crawl if you really want it to slow things down. And I don't mean in the bad way, I mean in the good way. And it can also speed things up to or at least allow the game master to speed things up to a fevered pace if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
What about you, Cameron?
So, kind of staying on the same bandwagon, I like ritualized mechanics that mark a change inside of a game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a huge fan of that because to me, it's like watching a play and you see those curtains close, you see them open again. It's that really, okay, now we're someplace different. Now this other thing is happening. And you see that more and more in games that I love. Swords and blades are both great examples of that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're starting to see them in story games. I mean, just kind of all over the place. And certainly One Child's Heart has those, very much like you're here and now, you're back in the laboratory. And I think that it helps set expectation, it controls pacing, and it just like you said, it helps set up the tone. Okay. Mm-hmm. We were in this serious moment. Now's a moment where we can breathe and joke around and do these things.
And that's all designed latency.
Mm-hmm.
You just reminded me of a thing I need to fix in my my Thursday night game.
What's that?
Well, I've been having this boundary problem of when to chat and when to play the game, because I have this like super chill, really cool table, and I love chatting with them, but we have a limited amount of time to play, and I need them to like I need to mark boundaries, right? Like I need to mark boundaries of like, now is the time to talk, now is the time to play. And ritual is actually one of those things, which means Bob knows where I'm going. Bob knows where I'm going.
The big die's coming back.
The big die is coming back. So I have this 96 millimeter D6.
Uh-huh.
I don't roll it. It's too big. Like it'll break something.
Yeah.
But what I do is I keep it off the table. And the rule is when the die is off the table, chat, tell me stories, show me YouTube videos, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When the die goes on the table, now we're playing.
Yeah.
And then like when we hit a break, I take the die back off the table, like as a marker of like, we're coming out.
Why did you stop doing that?
Effect.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
For some reason,
it just faded out.
Like we stopped using it when I started. Like we were using it when I was playing with you folks, and then we just stopped in the middle of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I just specifically with my Thursday game, because it's an after work game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cooldown, and again, they're like super chill people. Like Jerry's in that group, Sean's in that group. Like I love hanging out with them.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also like, I want to play this game. So
we may just have gotten to the point where we're pretty tight with being on and off.
Yeah.
Without needing it, and we just kind of faded out of it. But that's a good case for
I'm bringing it back. I'm getting no, Jerry. Everybody's to blame for it. Don't take it personally.
Jerry, no.
I'm equally bad about
Phil
it.
Phil loves to talk.
I do.
All of us are. Sometimes we have those days where we hit the Thursday table and we're just all like,
I'm just bringing the die out. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to put the die on the table.
Well, that's latency, right?
Yeah,
it
sure is.
Back after 4 years. We'll be doing this again. We're gonna go find some other topics out of the.
You think we should talk about grapple? No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
Camden, you ready for grapple?
Yeah, don't do it.
How about bards? What's your feeling on bards?
I love bards.
Okay, cool. Because we did the bard showdown. We went and got every bard out of every edition, and we
compared them. It was fun. Like the Rocker Boy. I think the Rocker Boy won.
I mean, it won with me. I mean, we should say rocker person because it doesn't have to be a boy.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a 90s.
Yeah,
that's a bad
sorry,
90s. Besides that, if you see quote rocker boys and vending machines, the picture on it is female.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Well, we hope. Yeah. So we're gonna go to the chat room. Anything in the chat room, question wise?
Yeah, actually. Well, we had 2 comments actually that. Ange had a comment. She's seen some games that were trying to be story games that introduced latency in such a way that ended up derailing the flow of role playing, and they were frustrating to her because they had good intention but they missed the mark. So yeah, it's not a perfect path. I mean, you need to be careful how you introduce that, depending on what you're looking for.
I'm curious as to what those games are.
Yeah, if she can jump in and mention that.
I'd be curious.
That would be cool.
See if I accidentally played one of them.
And Rob Aberzato brought up a point. There's like this weird confluence of milestones with us hitting 350 last week.
Yep.
Panda's hitting 150. Cypher Speak hit 50.
It came out like 5 minutes ago, or like 15 minutes ago. It just dropped.
Just a weird hey, wow, look at all these milestones in the Misdirected Mark network. So that was
it's
cool.
neat. It is neat. It's a lot of
Getting
podcasts on this network.
Yep.
3 years of Pandas. I will say there was 2 comments in there, and one of them is a challenge I'm willing to accept, which is not the second one. Yeah. I'm willing to take the first challenge. The first challenge was, can you design a fantasy game Camden would play? And I would be willing to come up with that game by asking Camden specifically what things in fantasy do you not like, and could I design around that? The other one was way too ambitious. Was, can you create a board game that Camden would play? And it's not.
No. The statement was creating a board game that Camden would enjoy.
Okay,
not that he would play.
I don't think it's the board.
I think it's easier to get one that
it's
you
not
would
the
play.
board game. Because here's what I'm going to do. To solve that problem with no effort, I'm going to give Camden one deck dungeon, which you play solo. You can just take the game.
You don't have any
no one's
going to
yell at you.
The table to
right. You just go. You play it by yourself. It's totally fun.
But dungeon.
Well,
so we're back to fantasy.
You should play Before There Were Stars.
Oh, that's barely a board game.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
It's a story game.
You will love Before There Were Stars, because it's actually just a very ornate
game.
Story game.
Yeah.
It's a story game.
It's a story game made by a board game company. Like there's no mistaking.
I'm down for that.
So we'll just reskin one deck dungeon to be one deck run.
No,
like
I'm just saying. I'm saying I would be willing, because I'm not a huge fan of fantasy either. So I would be willing to be like, well, what do I have to take out of fantasy to get you into this game? Because 1, I'm curious, and 2, because I probably could easily do that with swords. Like, I could probably make the right.
Yeah, my problem with fantasy is a big one that's kind of the foundation of the genre.
I mean, tell me, because I hold none of that stuff sacred. So just tell me if it.
Fantasy is predicated on the idea of violence without repercussion.
Yes.
And so that is...
I'm with you.
That is one of the biggest things that
if you talk to Camden and not to the mic, then nobody hears you.
I thought I was loud enough on that yes. Do people not hear the yes? Anyway.
So that's one, aside from the fact that I'm not super down with elves. It's the idea
that one's minor. I'll take elves out.
Almost every single trope, every single storyline, kind of what it's the foundation of what fantasy role playing is built on the idea of violence solves all of our problems.
Oh man, Bob, will you just put a pin, because my my feelings about D&D and colonialism, hey, indigenous people living in your cave, we're just gonna kill you, take your stuff, and then go kill other bigger things. Like, we could have a whole talk about.
You'd strangely probably like Phil Zellhall's setting, because it's just about the demons are the bad guys. They're just bad guys. Like they've basically subjugated all of humanity, and humanity's not shiny or happy or good. They're also messed up and bad, not great either. And then you just play humans. There's no other fantasy races really. I mean, there are, but they're not really present. And you're just fighting a revolution basically, and you're basically rallying people and to your banner to help overthrow this corrupt, evil government.
See, but once again, then it sounds like it's violence is the...
It is, actually, because the demons are... No, it is the problem with it, because it makes a pretty black and white bad guy, so that it just justifies. Mm-hmm. Again, this is my my 2006 game or whatever. Like, this is like it basically gets rid of the ambiguous part about why we should just use violence.
No,
right?
I get that.
But I am 100% with you. Like, I get what you're saying, and I would totally dig peeling that open and talking about some of those things, because I have a lot of similar feels.
Mm-hmm. And to be clear, I don't have a problem with violence being an option inside of a storytelling genre. The only option is where,
No, I'm with you. I think some games do that better than others, and I agree. Like, I think the neat thing for something like Blades is that you totally can have a character who in Blades is like the shrewdest negotiator is one of your 5 things. Mm-hmm. And that's legit. Like, that's a legit solution to a problem.
You did if there was modern Blades, and I don't know if there is, I've thought
about that.
That would be great.
I've played Leverage. I've played Leverage enough time, a bunch of times. Like, I love that game. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a perfect game, but anything that's a heist game, I like playing those too.
That's it. I would. I'm actually a big fan of talking about that because that's a thing about Hydra hackers where purposely the move to fight is actually a shitty move in the game. Like even on a 10 plus, it's not that good.
Yeah.
And so subtly it tries to, with the exception of one playbook, subtly it tries to tell you like, don't actually get into a fight. Like it's like stealth your way, negotiate your way.
Negotiation. Yeah.
And there is a thing like when you introduce the neighborhood watch into the game, you are introducing now the possibilities of violence. Because I have run plenty of those games where the neighborhood watch wasn't picked, and we didn't have fighting in those games.
Me and Jason Pitt were starting to conceptualize a game a bunch of years ago that was a fantasy game that was, we were tentatively calling it Blue Helms because of, I think it was a reference to the United Nations or something like that. Like the game was like you were supposed to go around and solve problems without using violence. If you used violence, then things would get worse. That was essentially a fantasy game. Like it was all about like the diplomatic skills that were used in D&D and solving problems without actually drawing your sword. I mean, of course, at some point you maybe had to draw your sword because there was no other way around a thing, because sometimes that's just how life goes. But for the most part, it was about, finding alternate solutions to that. In fact, you got rewarded faster for doing that.
And the chat room's bringing up a great example, Full of Magic.
Which I haven't played. So that's a game that I actually want to play, but part of my problem is because the majority of the genre doesn't fits inside of the part that I don't enjoy. I don't have a lot of emotional attachment to anything. So I mean, like I've played plenty of D&D in my life. I mean, that's and I think that 5e is a perfectly fine, solid game and is smartly designed for what it means to accomplish. I just don't love it. I mean, there's not that part of my heart that's like gets excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just doesn't happen for that.
That makes sense.
No, I'm with you. I mean, I have my own things with fantasy because it was never my first love as a kid. We talked about this before, right? I was a sci-fi nerd first. Yep. So anyway, cool. I just was really curious, and I like what you're saying. And there's probably there's a future episode. There's a future episode in there. Take it away, Chris.
Yeah.
Latency. Hey, it's a conversation corner. We're going to talk about anything and everything. Our lives, gaming stuff. Mr. Rector, what time is it?
9:25.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk for like
a little bit.
10-15 minutes here, and then we'll go to the after show. Who wants to go first? Bob?
Yeah, sure.
You haven't said anything in a while.
Yeah, I haven't actually spent a lot of time on the Minecraft server lately. Just between it was a couple of weeks in a row last week and the week before where work was kind of kicking my ass. So I was just kind of like unwinding just without any of that. And what I do need to do more of, I think, is just sometimes just jump in the Mumble server and just chat and
I'm
just
there
hang
a
out
lot.
because we had some good conversations Sunday night. When I was on my overnight shift, you were on till like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, because I was fixing my. I wasn't trying to keep my circadian rhythm for sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't been doing that, but I've actually been feeling a little better lately. I was in a funk. I realized that part of it could have been the fact that I was off my vitamin D that I was supposed to be taking. The doctor had said you should probably at one point take vitamin D and vitamin B12. And my last round of blood tests, when I had my physical. Earlier in the year, he said you don't need to take the B anymore, but I actually hadn't been taking my D because I was sick at the end of December and all through January. I wasn't taking anything except what I needed, the antibiotics and whatever else I needed to fight the particular illness that I had. But I started up on my D again, and I'm starting to kind of feel better. Plus, I also have an appointment scheduled for therapy near the end of the month, so I'm actually kind of feeling good about going to see someone and talk about some of the stuff that's going on in my head and that kind of thing. So that's kind of been lifting me up a little bit as well. We've got a bunch of new games that we're actually starting. We're switching over on the every other Thursday game to
the Sprawl.
Thank you, the Sprawl. Chris's every other Wednesday. We're going to be starting up Scum and Villainy.
Yeah.
And what's the other game? We just started up Veil 2020 on Sunday mornings a couple weeks ago. So I'm like having a good time getting the ball rolling on these new games and looking forward to seeing where we can go with those and having a good time. So That's where I am. Camden, where about you?
It's weird. So a lot of pressure coming from an upcoming Kickstarter. So
Yeah, that'll do that.
try to ignore that and just kind of keep moving forward. But it's weird, like I'm 49 years old at this point. Went to high school in the 80s. I walk around with a pocket computer, with me everywhere I go. I can literally call anyone in the world from that pocket computer. And there's not that I could afford them, but there's self-driving cars out there, fully electric vehicles. There's all this stuff. And teenagers are still jerks, and they still bully, and they still use homophobic slurs, and they still my youngest at his new school, one of the there's a group of kids that did the "we're gonna kick your ass after school" thing, and just like, and and I know how that plays out, and I just and you see that same sort of ugliness and bullying on the internet, and I want more for humanity. I mean, we live in the future.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one positive thing in the
absolutely.
area? So my kid's Dojang, which is actually right between your school district and my kid's school district. Right? They did an initiative in the fall called Bullying Stops With Me. And it was voluntary, that no one had to sign up for it. But if you signed up for it, you one, you said obviously you weren't going to bully, but two, that you would stand up for anyone being bullied. And so all these kids took pledges, and they have T-shirts that say like "Bullying Stops With Me" and stuff like that. And it was I know at my son's school, like there's like 4 or 5 of the kids from the Dojang, and like that's like stuff stuff they do, is like they actually look for that and actually like go and stand up for people.
That's cool. That's great to hear. I mean,
it sucks because teenagers are still teenagers.
They're still caricatures of humanity. I mean, there really are sometimes like 80s movie villains.
Well, I think what it says is that, and I've said this for the longest time, that the thing that scares me the most, the biggest threat to my kids, are their friends, because I don't know what their parents have been like, are like, that kind of thing. And I mean, I think there are people who went right from the 80s and like didn't change, right? Like just rolled right into the 2000s and just propagated, right? Just propagated that forward.
All right.
So it sucks.
So that's my bummerness. How about you, Chris?
Bummerness. I don't know. I want to talk about this like some more, but never mind. We'll talk about it later. So I've been playing more board games. I don't know. I do that a lot more now. I live in a house that has 140 of them. So
you live in a house with Jen
and Bridget,
who are avid board game players.
Yeah, on Friday night we were playing till like 2:30 in the morning, board games.
So like lunchtime for you.
Yeah, it's like lunchtime for me. Then I stayed up a little later. I watched the new Ultraman on Netflix.
Oh, interesting.
So me and Jen, last night was date night, so we watched a bunch of that after we made dinner together and all that good stuff. It's both formulaic while providing some new interesting ideas to the history of the show. I very much enjoyed that. Also, like some commentary on so it's a world that has aliens in it, right? Because Ultraman is this. You have to just go watch it, but like it's good. It's not monster of the week like you'd expect from an Ultraman show, because Ultraman was like, I'm gonna fight the giant monster. Like they never get giant yet. Right. I'm sure it'll happen at some point, but that is not a thing. For those who don't know what Ultraman is, Ultraman is a Japanese hero that wore the suit, and there's like a mythology behind him.
This is old school stuff. This is from back in the 60s in like the Godzilla heyday. Like this is seriously old school stuff. I have somewhere in a drive somewhere on my system, I have the entire DVD collection of the original show. And a couple of those episodes were hard to watch because it was so cheesy. But
that's what it was, right?
Yeah,
like
that's what it was.
Instead of like the Super Sentai, it was like the one. I mean, they had the team. It was a Sentai show because they had the Science Patrol.
Yeah.
But then there was Ultraman, who would get the ramp up, like he would get giant and fight the giant
stuff
monster.
Would happen. He'd click the proton capsule. He would grow big, and then he'd go out and fight.
Yeah.
So is the new one live action or is it animated?
No, it's animated.
Okay.
It's kind of got, if anybody's watched, I don't know, it's got sort of like a weird cell shading CGI animation. So if anybody's ever watched Ruby on Rooster Teeth, it's like a little bit more detailed animation than that. If you were going to ask me, and I'm talking about later seasons of Ruby, not the first seasons of Ruby. Which, by the way, if you've never watched Ruby, you should probably go watch that too. It's really good if you like, that sort of Americanized anime thing going on.
I watched a few episodes with you and Steve one night. It was good.
Yeah,
I dug it.
So there's that. Like I like it. Like I like some of the fight choreography that's in it. I like the storytelling that's going on. I like that it's some stuff that I'm like, oh good, I can like sort of attach to, like latch onto this as like fun storytelling. And then there's a whole bunch of like social issues that are going on in the background too. I'm like, okay, like it's gonna hit both of the things I like to watch. So thanks, I appreciate that. I'm not gonna get burnt out on one or the other. I played a bunch of old Nintendo games. Excite Bike. Come on.
I love Excite Bike.
Can we I want to talk about the mechanics of these video games. They're so stupid simple, but they're so much fun. Like
Excite Bike is one of my favorite Nintendo games.
So like Excite Bike, the whole point of the game is like you're riding and then you can like do little wheelies to make yourself jump farther. And also there's a turbo button so that you can go faster. Like
but it's also a limited force.
Because you can overheat.
Yes.
So like those, and you also want to land your bike flat. Because if you land your bike flat, you don't slow down.
Yep.
So if you can do all of these things, like you can go really fast through these boards. And as you progress through the boards, the different tracks, the time to beat to stay in to continue playing the game without having to like start a new start over, like game over, they get shorter and shorter and shorter until of course Nintendo hards you out of the game.
Nintendo hard, yep.
Also it's really frustrating when you're racing against other people because the computer gets in your way all the time. Like it's supposed to. So Excite Bike's really good. I also played a bunch of Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Man, I feel like that's probably the original rhythm game. If it's not, it's got to be up there. Because that game's all about like rhythm.
It's all about not getting punched by Mike Tyson.
I mean, yes, or Sandman. If you get to the Sandman,
yes.
There is
a timing thing.
I got up the second Don Flamingo. My reflexes, my twitch.
Flamingo. Oh,
Don Flamingo the second time.
I remember.
Don Flamingo the second time is way harder than Don Flamingo the first time because the first time you can just 1-2 punch him back and forth.
Yep.
Also, this is a very clever game about teaching you how to play the game through fighting fights.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, Glass Joe.
Yeah, it just teaches you to punch. Like you're gonna punch him left, right, whatever. And then the next fight against the Baron guy, like it's the first time you get one of the star punches, so you can do the super uppercut.
Do you remember the full size game of it?
You mean where you were the gridded green?
The wireframe, right? You were the wire.
You could also play the
body blow, uppercut.
You could also play the one where you actually used your fists to hold onto the thing and punch.
Yeah.
That was also cool.
I was terrible at that.
I was also terrible at that. Camden, I'm really not surprised due to your love of violence. You know,
do you? I mean, you guys remember Street Fighter? In my high school,
I was bad at fighting games.
In my high school, there was a Street Fighter game at the cafe next to our school that were these rubber pads that you hit, and the harder you hit, the harder the fighters hit.
Oh wow!
So Gilgore, like when he was in Taekwondo, used to play that game and would like jump up in the air and like punch that thing and it would like rock forward and stuff. It was like ridiculous.
Wow. My only fighting game experience was Karateka on the PC.
Karateka
used to just torture me.
The music for Karateka is
the music
fantastic.
was great. And then you'd get to the princess or the girl that you had to rescue, because it's always a girl you have to rescue in those games because they're from the 80s.
Yeah. Well,
correct.
But yeah, you would get there and then she'd, do a snap kick to your face and then you'd be like, oh, and then you'd have to start over. It's like, what the hell was that?
Welcome to 80s video games.
Yeah, I know, right?
My favorite was I always forget the name of it. It was the karate one with the 2 sticks. Full point.
Yeah.
Half point. It was the
You
remember you'd like
kind of
move the sticks in a different.
Kid where it was like on the
Kung
mat.
Fu, man. The name of that game was Kung Fu. I'm pretty sure.
Because it might have been.
There was a really.
I thought it was a Karate Champ.
Oh, it might have been Karate Champ.
Because there was Yi-Er Kung Fu, which was different. Like that was the one with the game where like the different villains would like Nunchaku would come after you.
Oh yeah.
But Karate Champ was the one with the 2 sticks. Oh, I loved that game. I loved. Yeah, good stuff. Oh man, I love stupid 80s games. And not enough to play them again because every time I see them, I'm like, I'm done with this. But,
yeah, they're not great. But I think that there's things to be learned from them, even in tabletop. The very specific. I mean, this is what it does. It's everything goes into the design of accomplishing that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they had to teach you without elaborate they had to teach you, one, the books weren't very big.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they had to teach you the game on the fly almost, because no one was ever going to read the books. Like,
Yeah, so they were teaching you in the game. Like,
Yeah.
like Mario is the first stage of Mario is teaching you Mario.
Yep.
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
the first thing you run into is a Goomba.
Yep.
To jump on the Goomba before you get to the turtles, which you have to jump
Right.
on twice, which are more complicated.
Mhm.
You get a mushroom pretty early that changes you from Little Mario to Big Mario. That mushroom is almost impossible to not
Yes.
not get.
Yeah, because it falls, it
it's-
hits the pipe and comes
it
at
is,
you.
It is designed that you
Mhm.
actually have to try really hard to not get hit by it.
You have to actually walk away.
And
is
not
what-
only that,
yeah.
walk away and jump up on
Yeah,
top of the
exactly.
thing. Also, it's got a really flashing, pretty question mark block to draw your attention to it.
Yep.
And if you get into the design of, and then a little bit after that, like then you get a turtle. So
Yep.
like jump on it
Yep.
twice and kick it, you see what happens.
Yep.
And then there's a warp pipe, and the warp pipe is there to help you skip basically the tutorial for the game.
Yes.
So like you don't have
To
to,
get more
worry
points.
about. Well, not only just get more points, but it helps you like
Once you know how to play the game,
you
you
can
can skip
go
the
there and
tutorial
do
part
that,
and just
yeah.
move into the deeper. Yeah.
it's crazy that how that stuff is designed. Mario, the actual design of Mario is also fascinating. If I know we've been going on forever. The design of Mario is fascinating because it shows you how you can be economical in your design to make things work. Because I mean, the game is stupid simple, but the design, like how they made the actual pixels and everything on that game, like they crunched as much as they could. Like everything in that game is symmetrical, so that they only had to make that code once, and they would just copy it to flip it.
Yep.
So it's just way smaller. It's how they could fit 8 worlds and all the secret stuff on that little cartridge, because that cartridge is before. Like later games like Super Mario 3, like they had like an extra memory chip inside those cartridges. So that if you ever download the ROMs, you can actually see it.
Yep.
The data for Super Mario Brothers is like a quarter of the data for like Super Mario 3 because they just didn't have the space.
Yeah.
In fact, having that blue background was a big deal. Like there'd never been anything like that in a Nintendo game before.
Yeah.
Everything was always black because it didn't cost anything as far as data
Pixels.
went.
Yep.
So like as a designer, there's like a lesson to be learned there about being efficient and economical and elegant in your design.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm
Did we
done.
hit everybody?
I think we didn't talk about. Did we? Yeah, we talked about everybody.
Phil?
No.
No.
No,
Phil's turn.
Do you go ahead, Phil?
So let's see. I think I mentioned it last week. I've been working on getting healthy. So I weighed in this morning, lost 5 pounds from last
Yay.
week.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I got a lot of steps last week. I hit my step goal 3 times out of 5 during the week. The weekends are ridiculous. Like I don't move enough on the weekends, and to be honest, I walked enough during the week. I was pretty happy to be like on the weekends, like I can cool off and kind of recover a little. But the Fitbit's great. It every hour during the workday, it like buzzes me and it's like, you haven't gotten your 250 steps yet. And I've gotten really good about just stopping what I'm doing, locking my screen, and like walking right out the office, taking a quick lap, coming right back to my desk, and like, picking up my 250 and going back to work.
Awesome.
I really got my food under control this week. So I've been using my Fitness Pal to count up my calories again. So I'm pretty happy. I'm going to, I mean, obviously I'm sticking with it, but it was a good start. Like I'm really happy. 5 pounds was way more than I thought I would lose in the first week.
Yeah, that's a nice first week.
Yeah, it was a good start.
It'll slow down.
I'm
It always
big.
does.
I'm big. Like I lose weight fast in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like I will lose a bunch of it fast, which will be fun. And then yes, it will slow down. I ran masks. We had just a little bit of it. Tony wound up getting a work call during the like at the beginning of the game, so we didn't get quite as much material. But boy, like everything we get out of that game is like gold. Like for just the scene we played, which was nothing more than rescuing people in a dock that had been attacked by a supervillain, it was great. Like it was so the roles, like it, I don't know, everything works in that game. The roles worked really well. The way it came out with everybody at the end with like the kind of emotions they were feeling, like I really it was good. It was totally worth the scene. Like it was great. And then I'm getting ready to run the sprawl. Here's the thing I really like in design. Hamish, really smart. The book tells you, like I started reading the book and you read the first chapter and then it tells you if you're gonna MC this game, read the following chapters in the following order. And it actually has you skip half the book. And it's like, go read the MCing parts, then come back and just skim the playbooks. And then it's like, but if you're going to play the game, just read the following chapters in order and stop right before the MC part. So I did exactly that. And it was really good because it wound up showing me like, this is how you run the game. and then you go back and read how to set up the game, and it had already like I had already read the chapter of like, hey, when you MC your first session, this is what you do, and then you read the player side of it, and I'm like, got it. That game is super cool. It is my kind of cyberpunk.
Awesome.
Like, it's very Gibson. There are so many Gibson quotes scattered throughout the chapter headers. I'm like, I feel like Hamish and I are on the same page in terms of source material.
Mm-hmm.
And I like a lot of the mechanics. I'm really looking forward to putting this game to the table. I think it's going to be wickedly fun. The character generation part is really cool. The way they do bonds is a player tells a story about a mission that they were like the key component on. Mm-hmm. So you say like, I did a job for, and I'm just going to use a Shadowrun corporation. Like I did a corporate extraction for Renraku. And then the person to the left of you tells why they were on that mission. Okay. And they get a +1 with you. And you mark these corporate clocks. So each corporation has a clock of when they discover it's you and they come after you. Everyone else at the table can also say they were part of the mission and get a +1 link to you, but you keep marking up the clock. Uh-huh. So it's like a balancing. Like if everybody was on a mission, then that corporation is that much closer to being like, oh, we know who you are, we're going to come burn you. But if you don't take it, then everybody has like kind of loose affiliations with each other. So it's like a really nice balancing act. Like a couple people can link onto like one mission, and then a couple people should link onto another. Really, it's kind of a neat little way to do the linkage part. And you have to say what you did on that mission. Like, that's cool. Oh yeah, I was on the mission. I was the driver. When the whole thing hit the fan, I'm the one who flew in and extracted the team. That kind of thing. So I'm totally looking forward to running this on Thursday.
Cool.
That's me. That everybody now?
That is all of us.
Awesome.
All right, let's do some Patreon shoutouts. Jean Lorbert, Jeff Stevens, Jim Morrison, John Huto Rutilla, MT Black, Matthew Pazzarelli, Nate Brooms, Remy Bilido, Robert Aducci, Robert Day, Ryan Bolter, The Space Rhino, Steve Bissonette, The Closet Gamer, Thomas Hook, Troy Taylor, Troy Pitchelman. Congratulations on 50 episodes, by the way.
Yeah.
And Darcy, too. Tim Okoye and Wayne Peterson. Thank you so much for being our patrons, and thank you everyone else so much for listening.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with our other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of the other shows on the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bone Stone and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, The Gnomecast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast All-Stars, Zhangu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have restructured your game for the proper amount of latency, send us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Check out our Facebook group. Hit us up on Twitter. The show in the network is @misdirectedmark. He's at Camden. He's at Robert M. Everson. I'm DNA Phil, and of course, the Light 101.
Yay.
Yay. If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. Misdirected Mark Word Scramble. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhangu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhangu Hustle. And last but certainly not least, Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
A little bit of latency.
Just build.
We out. Welcome to the after show.
The after show.
The after show.
The after show.
Hey, we made it.
We did a show after
did a
that
thing.
terrible technical problem at the beginning. Hey everybody, that
You gotta
sucked. And I'm
remember-
so sorry. I tested it, but I think this mixer is just old, and the power supply on it is not nearly as good as it used to be, and it's having a hard time powering all the mics that we are attaching to
We
it.
should really just buy a new.
We do probably need to get a new 8-channel mixer that will
Yes.
do the job.
Probably a good
We
idea.
need
which
a
is-
modern mixer.
Yeah, which I'm very sad about because I've been using this mixer for 7 years.
Yes. Yes, because when I first met you,
Uh,
you used to haul it around in a box and bring it everywhere.
I did.
I
I
feel
did.
like we should get to a point where you don't have to do that.
I mean, I don't really do that anymore.
No, but I mean, we should just get a modern one. Like,
Yeah, well-
they're even smaller.
I mean, actually, the 12 channels are about the same size, but we don't need a 12-channel mixer.
No, we don't need a 12-channel mixer.
Although
unless
we
we're
use-
unless we're going to start collecting a whole bunch of extra hosts around.
we
here.
use a lot of the channels on
Happens.
this sucker.
I'd be okay getting a whole bunch of extra hosts, but we'd have to, we have to start trying.
Well, then we just rotate them in and out.
We're
Yeah,
gonna need
fair.
a bigger boat.
Then I can take weeks off.
Well, then what we do is we basically do like misdirected mark. We do like talent hunt, right? Like, so we're all sitting at the table.
That's right.
Like, come in and pitch us your game, right? Like, pitch us your
really-
design idea.
I want to be want to have no part of that shit. When you start straying towards reality television, I'm like, I'm not interested anymore.
But how are we going to find our next?
and then
our
we
next
vote
host?
hosts off the island. We put their torch out.
Oh yeah.
No, we'll put their game in the
In the
fire.
shredder.
In the shredder. There you go. That's terrible. See,
That's a terrible one.
So, since we're in the after show,
Yeah, yeah.
and people
Yes.
have paid for access to this,
Yeah.
I will officially talk trash and tell you what the game
Oh,
was.
yeah,
yes.
Which actually came up several times. My
I know they
chat
were,
room
they were
died, so I
dying.
can't follow
right.
along.
Yeah.
So it was actually came up several times. It was Villains and Vigilantes, but it was the new version. I was playing with Jeff and
Jeff D.
Yeah, Jeff D and the other creator,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
co-creator, whose
I like Jeff's artwork.
name just left my head. But it was before it had been released to the public, and so they had redone a bunch of the initiative and things like that. It was one of the worst game experiences
Redone
I've
it
ever
wrong.
had.
It's just
Oh man, worst game experiences of all time. Well,
Yeah.
we should. Well, so that what was yours, Phil?
Oh, since we're dishing,
Yeah,
mine was Tacticon 2015. I played in this. Trying to remember the name of the game. It was like Witch Hunter or something like that.
Mhm.
It was, Chris, because I texted you in the middle of
You
the
did.
adventure
You were-
because I was like, this GM is so
Did
bad.
you realize that was like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, well, I remember. It was so bad. Like, the game wasn't,
how bad was it?
well, it was so railroaded. Like, literally nothing we could do mattered.
Mhm.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
in this game, like, why am I here? Like,
Yeah.
anything I've tried to do isn't working until the GM's like, well, if you do this, like the NPC tells you, and it's like, oh, like it was so bad that I was like, I think I texted Chris, I was like, I want to summon a Sneezak. Like, just like, oh, I know, I did it
Look,
Pokemon
this is-
style.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is when I was not nearly as nice or as
Sneezak,
kind of
I
a person as I
choose
used to
you.
be.
Yeah, that was the
As I am-
text.
Yep.
Sneezak,
Yeah.
I choose you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is when I was not a very nice person when it came to stuff like that. Like I'm much kinder, gentler.
No, I really didn't want you to tell them off. I wanted you to run the game.
Oh,
Like I needed you to come in and just be like, excuse me for a second, and just like sit in the GM's seat so the rest of us could play the game, which was tough because Tacticon, like everybody else I played games with, like super good GMs, like had a really, Chess is
the
trying
cat.
to get in.
The podcast's trying to enter.
Podcast
Yes.
like what?
All the
Camden's
other
like,
GMs,
stay out.
all the GMs I played with, super good. Like I played a great game of ETU and a few others. I think it was Sarah Martinez. Who wrote,
Yeah.
ETU, super good. But that game of whatever it wasn't Witchcraft because that I actually liked that game.
Yeah, that
Witch Hunter or something like
yeah.
that. And it was like this couple and they were like totally into this game. Like they had like all the books and it was like, this is the most amazing game ever.
Except
We
it
actually
wasn't.
made characters which were like not easy to make, and then we like played a totally ineffectual mystery where nothing we did mattered.
Do you remember that session of Aces and Eights we did? At, it was like a 2-hour session, and in like an hour and a half, we made characters, and then we started to run a combat to showcase the system, and it was like a countdown clock,
Count Up initiative.
count up initiative.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, no.
I also played a 4th edition Shadowrun demo
Ooh.
Mhm.
because I was like, before I spend money on this game, I'm gonna go find out if anything's actually changed in this game. Narrator voice. It didn't. Luckily, I just got out in 2 hours, and I was like, I'm okay. I knew it was bad when the guy like brought out like 3 blocks of D6s, and he's like, well, we'll need these today, and he just like puts them on the table, and I'm like,
So I've walked out of 2 games. Just like got up and left. That's the thing I've done. Not really super proud of it, but I don't know, those games were really bad. Like one was a game of like 2nd edition D&D, and me and the game master, after 2 hours of playing, and I don't know, we both had very different ideas of how that game should have been played, and we didn't have a session 0 or anything like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave because this is terrible. And then the worst part is like afterwards, he's like he emailed me, he's like, can you tell me what was wrong with it at least? So I'm like, are you sure you want me to do this? Like, I will tell you if you want, but I really don't want to. Like, this is not. I don't know if there's. I don't think it's gonna help at all. And he's like, no, I really want to know. I'm like, all right. So I wrote him like 5 paragraphs worth of like feedback on what I thought was up with it, and he basically told me I was wrong. So I'm like,
well,
all right then,
cool.
There you go. I mean, I guess you really didn't want to know.
Yep.
The worst one I ever heard of, but I actually was lucky enough I didn't play, was when the green shirts would go to Gen Con. A couple of the green shirts went and played in a what is it? It's a Bug Planet.
Yeah, Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers D20 game. And they get there, and the guy announces, this is the first of a 10-part game that he's going to run over the next 10 years of Gen Con. Part 1, you're going to play recruits in training
Basic
camp.
training.
And they played 4 hours and did not shoot a bug.
That seems like a problem.
If you're going to play Starship Troopers at a con, I better be shooting some fucking bugs.
Even
about
the
20
movie,
minutes into the game.
Yeah.
I agree with that statement. I mean,
even the movie starts with the Battle of Clendathu and then cuts back to the rest of the story.
It's an ugly planet, a bug planet.
Exactly.
And then people start dying.
But it was like, anytime somebody, so you know that thing I say when a GM's trying to be clever, don't? This is that moment, right? The second you're like, I'm going to plan a 10-part series over the next 10 years of Gen Con, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't. Just, no.
Yeah. I played at Gen Con, played a game with the creator, and it was a 4-hour slot. He showed up a half hour late.
Oh boy.
We ended up creating characters for about an hour, ran us through about 10 minutes of walking across the bridge, and it's like, you know what, I need to get something to eat, and bailed on us.
Wow.
Yep.
Care to tell us this design?
Yeah, it's somebody that we all know, so I'll tell you off the mic.
That's fair. That's fair. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
the worst story I heard was that about a game designer that I won't mention because we all know, just like what we all know them.
No, it's fine.
They were supposed to run a game. They had supposedly a full table, and they decided that they were too ill to run the game, and then I saw them like hanging out later. Yeah, I'm like, why would you do that? Like,
I mean, there's a reason. One, I carefully schedule when I'm going to run games, and carefully, carefully when I'm going to run games, and then yes, I think you have you are representing yourself. You need to take this stuff very professionally. But I know people, like I've known designers who are like, I'm gonna run all the games, and then they're burned out and wrecked, and they're like, oh my god, I can't make it to my It's just better if you just go run a couple really good ones.
Yep.
That's a self-care thing. Like, have some self-care.
Absolutely.
I mean, I went pretty whole hog at QCC, but even then I still managed my sleep, my downtime. Like, I managed all of that to still run a bunch of games without completely burning myself out.
Yeah. Fair.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear that story.
Rob dropped a great quote in the chat room that would be awesome for like a chopped version of New Game Designer kind of a thing. Whose game goes in the shredder and whose game gets laminated?
That's pretty funny. That's pretty on brand.
That would be brutal. Like I mean, assuming it's just a printout that I have somewhere else.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
I ever want to do.
No,
that's terrible. I mean, I have more than once had to been talked off the ledge from shredding my own games.
Yeah.
I'm I'm bad enough to my own.
Like I would have to have so much time with the people that were part of like that, us like looking at their games, being like, look, if we do this, it's all theater. Like none of this is bad. We don't mean anything.
In fact, don't even make a real game.
Yeah,
like, don't make a real.
right.
Like we will. I don't know. Like I couldn't do it.
Okay,
like I
so
can't
now
do that.
I could make a LARP about pretending to do that. I just couldn't do
Yes,
that for
there you
real.
go.
I would love us, like if we're going to do something like that, I'd love us to say, hey, let's get somebody and walk them through the entire game process and check in with them.
See, that would be fun.
once a
I would
month,
totally do
That's
that.
from beginning till,
So mentorship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a mentor.
I would totally do
So,
that.
so sometime soon on Misdirected Mark Productions, you'll be seeing us do that at some.
Oh,
That's a really
that
good
would be
idea.
That is a
that
really
would be
good idea.
amazing
We'll
to just
find
mentor.
somebody and we'll mentor somebody through the process, whatever they want to do with it. Like, and if they and maybe Encoded will publish it if they want it, and if they don't, then they
Well, it
won't.
would just be an option at the end. If you want
Yeah.
to publish it yourself, publish it yourself. We'll
show-
teach you how to do
We'll
that.
do that part too.
But if you don't want to do that, then that would be an option.
yeah, like whatever you want to do. Like
Yeah, Misdirected Mark mentor.
I mean, there are people who want nothing to do with the publishing part, and I will be honest, it's a pretty smart idea.
yeah, and
Like,
if they want everything to do with the publishing part, we can assist with
we'll
that.
give you everything we know.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you.
Oh, I would like that. The only I would
this
love
is-
it if it was somebody local,
Some-
because I would love somebody that we could
Yeah.
actually.
Somebody needs to write that idea down so that we don't do the thing that we always do, which is like, that's a great idea, and then
You
never
mean
do it.
put a pin in it. Bob.
put a pin in it.
Yeah, put a pin in
Ding.
We never do that. We never did it. We talked about it. That happens all the time.
Oh,
My
all
favorite
the
thing
time.
is Phil's in the Slack room for Misdirected Mark podcast and says, "We need an idea for next week." And then occasionally I'll be like, "If only there was a document in our folder of different ideas that we pinned."
And then there's Phil, who's on the other end of his Slack, going, "You,
Nice job, wise ass.
yeah, thanks, buddy." At least you didn't send me the link to the pins page.
No.
Like, at least I just had to go find it and open it myself. Like, yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, but we've done that so many times. Like,
Oh.
it's a really great idea. Like, and people are like, "Hey, remember 50 episodes when you said that thing?" I'm like, "We're like, no, we don't remember that."
I don't remember that.
But we pinned it.
I mean, honestly, the weekly cycle of doing the show,
Yeah,
don't within 2 episodes remember what happened.
me neither.
What I
Like,
said.
until I go back and look at like an episode title, I'm like, "Oh, I remember doing that. I remember some of the conversation
Right.
that we had."
Yeah, go back and listen to it. I'm like, oh wow, we never went back to that. Yeah, like, oh no, that's no good.
All right, it's 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
We should roll out.
Camden keeps checking his watch, so
Yeah, because I know you. I respect your time.
Oh,
I
I
know you got to
appreciate
go to
that.
work.
We need to transform and roll out.
yeah. Bye, everybody. We'll see you
Good night.
next week for
We're
something.
gonna make up a topic next week. I don't know. What
Good
it is
night.
yet.
More
Thanks
trash
for coming
talking.
out. We love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Stop streaming.